In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where alien species dominate star systems and humans are considered nothing more than primitive newcomers, everyone assumes they know who the real predators are: the Krillian Empire with their razor-sharp claws and acidic blood, the Vorthak Collective with their hive minds and devastating plasma weaponry, the ancient Zephyrians who can phase through matter itself. But what they don't know is that the most dangerous hunter in the entire galaxy sits quietly in the corner of a crowded cantina on Station Omega 7, never speaking a word, never drawing attention to herself. She's just another human, small, unremarkable, invisible to the galaxy's apex predators who swagger through the corridors believing themselves untouchable. They call her the Mute Girl, if they call her anything at all. What they don't realize is that silence can be the deadliest weapon of all. And humanity's greatest secret isn't their technology, their numbers, or their determination. It's her, a single human who has turned the art of being overlooked into the perfect camouflage for the galaxy's most efficient killing machine. The alien species are about to learn why humans survived when so many other species didn't. Why evolution favored the quiet ones. Why sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one you never see coming. This is the story of Maya Chen, the hunter who rewrote the rules of survival in a galaxy that forgot to fear the silent ones. Maya Chen sat in the darkest corner of the nebulous Edge Cantina, her small frame barely visible against the worn metal booth. The establishment buzzed with the usual mix of galactic travelers, smugglers, mercenaries, and traders from dozens of species. Holographic advertisements flickered overhead, advertising everything from illegal weapon modifications to exotic pleasure experiences on distant worlds. She watched everything and said nothing. She had not spoken a single word in over 3 years. To the casual observer, Maya appeared to be just another unremarkable human. Earthborn humans were still considered galactic newcomers, having joined the wider galaxy only 50 years ago. Most alien species viewed them as soft, weak, and generally harmless. They were wrong on all counts, but Maya had spent considerable effort ensuring that misconception remained intact. At 24 standard years old, Maya stood barely 5 feet tall, with dark hair that she kept deliberately unkempt and clothing that was always a size too large. She had learned long ago that being overlooked was the greatest advantage any hunter could possess. While other species announced their presence with elaborate displays of strength, advanced technology, or intimidating physical features, Maya had perfected the art of invisibility. A group of Krillian warriors entered the cantina with their characteristic swagger. 7 feet tall, with chitinous exoskeletons that gleamed like polished obsidian, they were among the galaxy's most feared predators. Their homeworld of Krillos had produced some of the most successful bounty hunters, assassins, and military commanders in known space. Their natural weapons included retractable claws that could slice through most metals and glands that produced a highly corrosive acid they could spit with remarkable accuracy. The lead Krillian, whose scarred carapace marked him as a veteran warrior, scanned the cantina with compound eyes that could detect movement in multiple spectrums. His gaze passed over Maya without even a moment's pause. To him, she was furniture, background noise, utterly beneath notice. This was exactly what Maya wanted. She had been tracking this particular group for 3 weeks across 4-star systems. The Krillians called themselves the Crimson Talon Brotherhood, and they had made the mistake of raiding human colony ships. 17 vessels had been hit, their cargo holds emptied, and their crews sold into slavery on the Outer Rim markets. The attacks had been brutal and efficient, leaving no survivors to identify the attackers. But they had made one crucial error. They had assumed no one was watching. Maya's enhanced cybernetic implants, carefully hidden beneath synthetic skin that perfectly matched her natural flesh tone, recorded every detail. Her eyes, which appeared completely normal to any scanner or visual inspection, contained quantum processors that could analyze and catalog vast amounts of information in real time. Her nervous system had been quietly upgraded with military-grade enhancement packages that boosted her reflexes to superhuman levels while maintaining the appearance of baseline human biology. The modifications had been expensive, painful, and completely illegal in most civilized systems. Maya had acquired them through channels that officially did not exist, paid for with credits earned through contracts that were never officially recorded. She was, in every legal sense, a ghost. The Krillians ordered their drinks with the arrogance typical of apex predators. Fermented Thanaxian root liquor, known throughout the galaxy for its potency and the fact that it could kill most carbon-based life forms that were not specifically adapted to process its toxins. They drank it like water and laughed at jokes told in their clicking, chittering language. Maya understood every word. Her linguistic implants had decoded Krillian speech patterns within the first few minutes of beginning her hunt. She now spoke 14 alien languages fluently, though she would never let anyone know this. Knowledge was power, and showing your hand early was the mark of an amateur. The conversation was exactly what she had expected. The Krillians were planning their next raid, a luxury transport vessel carrying wealthy passengers from the core worlds to a resort planet in the mid-rim. The ship would be lightly defended, its passengers would fetch high prices in the slave markets, and the cargo manifest indicated significant quantities of rare metals and exotic technologies. They were scheduling the attack for tomorrow, when the transport would be passing through the Kepler Drift, a region of space known for its sensor-dampening nebulae and lack of patrol vessels. It would be perfect for an ambush. Maya made note of every detail while maintaining her facade of bored disinterest. Her fingers moved almost imperceptibly across the surface of her drink glass, activating microscopic sensors that recorded the Krillians' exact vocal patterns, biological signatures, and even the chemical composition of their exhalations. All of this data would be useful later. A Vorthak merchant approached the Krillians' table, its massive bulk moving with surprising grace despite weighing nearly 400 kilograms. The Vorthak were one of the galaxy's most successful trading species, their natural hive mind abilities making them excellent negotiators, and their massive physical presence ensuring that most beings took their business proposals seriously. Maya watched with interest as the Vorthak began speaking in the trade language, offering to purchase information about upcoming business opportunities in the shipping lanes. The conversation was carefully coded, but Maya's enhanced cognitive processing allowed her to decode the real meaning immediately. The Vorthak was a fence, looking to purchase advance information about which ships would be hit so he could position his own vessels to acquire the stolen goods at below-market prices. This was an unexpected development, but not an unwelcome one. The Vorthak's involvement meant the piracy operation was larger and more organized than Maya had initially realized. Instead of a simple revenge mission against the Crimson Talon Brotherhood, she was now looking at a network that potentially involved multiple species and significant resources. She made a mental note to investigate the Vorthak's background and connections. Her personal database, stored in quantum-encrypted memory banks that were literally part of her brain tissue, began compiling everything she knew about Vorthak's trading operations in this sector. The Cantina's atmosphere shifted as a new group entered, three beings that Maya immediately recognized as trouble, though for reasons that would not be apparent to most observers. They appeared to be simple traders, their clothing and equipment marking them as legitimate merchants. But Maya's enhanced senses detected concealed weapons, military-grade body armor hidden beneath civilian clothing, and the distinctive chemical signatures that indicated recent use of combat stimulants. These were not traders, they were hunters. Maya remained perfectly still as the newcomers scanned the cantina with professional thoroughness. Their eyes moved in patterns that she recognized from her own training, checking sight lines, identifying exits, cataloging potential threats. When their gaze passed over her, she made sure to project the aura of someone completely absorbed in her own thoughts, paying no attention to her surroundings. It worked. Like everyone else, they dismissed her as harmless. But Maya was already calculating. The timing of their arrival, combined with their obvious professional competence, suggested they were here for the same reason she was. Someone else was hunting the Crimson Talon Brotherhood. This complicated things considerably. Maya had spent years perfecting her methods, developing techniques that relied heavily on her ability to remain unnoticed and work alone. The presence of other hunters introduced variables she could not easily control. Worse, if they were competent professionals, they might actually succeed in eliminating her targets before she could complete her own mission. She could not allow that to happen. The Krillians concluded their business with the Vorthak and began preparing to leave. Maya noted that they had arranged to meet again tomorrow at a different location, presumably to finalize the details of their next raid. She also observed that the 3 newcomer hunters had positioned themselves to follow the Krillians when they left. Maya made her decision. She finished her drink with deliberate slowness, placed the appropriate number of credits on the table, and stood up with the careful movements of someone who had been sitting too long and was working out the stiffness in her joints. To any observer, she appeared to be a tired human preparing to find a cheap hotel room for the night. Instead, she began moving through the cantina with the fluid precision of a predator closing on its prey. Her route took her past the newcomer hunter's table, where she deliberately stumbled slightly, catching herself against their booth while muttering what sounded like an embarrassed apology. The contact lasted less than 3 seconds, but it was enough for her to plant microscopic tracking devices on all 3 targets and download the contents of their personal communication devices through induction sensors in her fingertips. By the time she had apologized and moved away, Maya knew exactly who these hunters were, who had hired them, and what their specific mission parameters were. They were corporate security contractors working for Meridian Shipping Solutions, the company that owned most of the vessels the Krillians had been raiding. Their orders were to eliminate the Crimson Talon Brotherhood with extreme prejudice and recover any stolen cargo that could be salvaged. Maya smiled for the first time in weeks. Corporate contractors were predictable, methodical, and utterly dependent on their technology and superior firepower. They would approach the problem like a military operation, gathering intelligence, planning their assault, and executing it with overwhelming force. They would never see her coming. Maya left the cantina through a service exit, moving through the station's maintenance corridors with the confidence of someone who had mapped every passage, vent, and access point during her first day aboard. She had learned long ago that understanding your environment was often more important than understanding your enemy. Station Omega 7 was a typical deep space trading post, a massive structure built into a hollowed-out asteroid that provided both protection from space hazards and the kind of anonymous environment that attracted beings who preferred to avoid official attention. The station's population fluctuated between 10 and 50,000 inhabitants depending on trade routes and shipping schedules, and its administration had long ago adopted a policy of not asking too many questions about their residents' activities as long as taxes were paid and violence was kept to a minimum. Maya had been living here for 6 months, maintaining a cover identity as a freelance data analyst who worked remotely for various clients. Her official record showed a quiet, unremarkable human who paid her bills on time, caused no trouble, and spent most of her time in her quarters working on boring commercial databases. The station's security AI had classified her as a zero-threat entity, which meant she could move freely without triggering any monitoring protocols. Her actual quarters bore little resemblance to the modest accommodations listed in her official records. Maya had quietly purchased and connected 3 adjacent units, creating a sophisticated command center hidden behind false walls and holographic projections. The space contained enough computing power to run a small military operation, weapons storage that would have impressed a professional army, and manufacturing equipment capable of producing almost any tool or device she might need. Maya sealed the entrance behind her and activated the room's privacy shields, ensuring that no electronic surveillance could penetrate the space. Then she began preparing for the next phase of her mission. The corporate hunters would move against the Krillians within the next 12 to 18 hours, most likely during the planned raid on the luxury transport. This gave Maya a narrow window to eliminate both threats simultaneously, recovering the stolen cargo and ensuring that no one would be left alive to report what had actually happened. She began by reviewing the intelligence she had gathered on the luxury transport itself. The vessel was registered as the Stellar Princess, a high-end passenger liner that catered to wealthy travelers who wanted to experience the galaxy in comfort and style. According to its passenger manifest, it was currently carrying 237 beings from 17 different species, including several minor celebrities, a few diplomatic families, and a handful of extremely wealthy merchants. The ship's defensive systems were minimal, designed more for deterring opportunistic pirates than repelling a serious attack. A handful of point defense lasers, basic shields, and a small security team armed with standard equipment. Against the Krillians' military-grade weapons and combat experience, the Stellar Princess would last perhaps 10 minutes. Maya had no intention of allowing the attack to proceed as planned. Her fingers moved across holographic control interfaces with practiced efficiency, accessing databases and communication networks through channels that officially did not exist. Within minutes, she had complete schematics for the luxury transport, detailed psychological profiles of every crew member, and real-time tracking data that showed the vessel's exact location and projected course. She also began researching the corporate hunters' equipment and tactical preferences. Using the data she had stolen from their personal devices, they favored heavy weapons and frontal assaults, relying on superior firepower to overwhelm their targets. Their ship was a modified military assault vessel with enough armament to level a small city. This told Maya everything she needed to know about how to handle them. She spent the next several hours preparing her equipment and finalizing her plan. By the time she was finished, Maya had created what she privately considered to be her masterpiece, an operation so elegant and efficient that it would eliminate all threats while appearing to be nothing more than an unfortunate accident. As she worked, Maya reflected on how she had come to this point in her life. 3 years ago, she had been a different person entirely. Lieutenant Maya Chen, Terran Defense Force Special Operations, decorated veteran of the Outer Rim campaigns, and one of the most promising young officers in human military history. Then her unit had been betrayed during a classified mission in Krillian space, sold out by their own command structure to cover up an illegal weapons trafficking operation that reached into the highest levels of the human government. Maya had been the only survivor, and when she had tried to report what had happened, she had been marked for elimination by the same people she had sworn to serve. The attempts on her life had been subtle at first. Equipment failures during dangerous missions, intelligence reports that sent her into obvious traps, medical procedures that introduced untraceable toxins into her system. When those failed, they had become more direct. Maya had survived by learning to become invisible. She had faked her own death, stolen enough military resources to finance her new life, and disappeared into the galaxy's underworld, where official records meant nothing and survival depended on skills rather than paperwork. The Krillians who had killed her unit were part of a larger network that included humans, Vorthak, and several other species. Over the past 3 years, Maya had systematically hunted down and eliminated the peripheral members of this organization, always making their deaths appear accidental or the result of gang violence. The Crimson Talon Brotherhood represented the final major piece of the puzzle. Once they were eliminated, Maya would have enough evidence to expose the entire conspiracy and bring down the human officials who had betrayed her unit. But first, she needed to ensure that no one else interfered with her mission. The corporate hunters represented a complication she could not afford, and their deaths would need to appear completely unrelated to the Krillians' fate. Maya finished her preparations as the station's day cycle transitioned to night period. In 8 hours, the luxury transport would enter the Kepler drift. In 10 hours, the corporate hunters would intercept the Krillian attack force. In 12 hours, Maya would complete her mission and disappear once again into the vast anonymity of galactic civilization. She sealed her equipment into concealed storage compartments and activated the holographic projections that would make her quarters appear normal to any inspection. Then she made her way to the station's docking bay, where a small, unremarkable cargo shuttle waited to take her to her destiny. As Maya settled into the pilot's seat and began her pre-flight sequence, she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. 3 years of planning and preparation were about to culminate in a single perfect operation. The galaxy would lose some of its most dangerous predators, and no one would ever know that a single human had been responsible. The shuttle's engines hummed to life with barely a whisper of sound. Maya had modified the vessel extensively, replacing its standard propulsion system with military-grade drives that produced virtually no detectable emissions. To any scanner, it would appear to be nothing more than another piece of space debris drifting through the void. Maya guided the shuttle away from Station Omega 7 and into the darkness between the stars. Behind her, the station's lights grew smaller and dimmer until they disappeared entirely. Ahead lay the Kepler drift and the final confrontation she had been preparing for since the day her unit died. She had never felt more ready for anything in her life. The Kepler drift stretched across space like a cosmic graveyard, its swirling nebulae creating a maze of sensor shadows and electromagnetic interference that had claimed dozens of ships over the decades. Ancient stellar winds had carved the region into twisting corridors and dead-end pockets where even the most advanced navigation systems could become hopelessly confused. Maya had arrived 6 hours before the scheduled interception, using the time to position herself within the drift's most treacherous sections. Her shuttle drifted silently among the debris fields, its modified hull reflecting the nebula's strange energies in patterns that made it virtually invisible to both passive and active sensors. She watched through enhanced optics as the Stellar Princess approached the drift's outer boundary. The luxury liner moved with the ponderous grace of a ship designed for comfort rather than speed, its gleaming hull catching and reflecting the nebula's ethereal light. Maya could detect the vessel's defensive systems coming online as it entered the potentially dangerous region, but the precautions were purely routine. The ship's crew had no idea they were flying into a carefully orchestrated trap. Through her ship's sophisticated monitoring equipment, Maya tracked the positions of all the players in the approaching drama. The Crimson Talon Brotherhood had concealed their attack vessels in a cluster of metallic asteroids approximately 40,000 kilometers from the transport's projected course. The corporate hunters had positioned themselves closer to the nebula's edge, planning to intercept the Krillians after they revealed themselves by attacking the transport. Both groups believed they had achieved perfect tactical positioning. Neither realized they were being watched by someone who had spent weeks studying their operational patterns and psychological profiles. Maya's enhanced cognitive implants processed hundreds of variables simultaneously, calculating trajectories, timing sequences, and probability matrices with superhuman precision. Her plan required split-second coordination across multiple targets separated by vast distances, but she had rehearsed every aspect countless times in virtual reality simulations. The first phase would begin when the Krillians initiated their attack. Maya did not have to wait long. Her passive sensors detected the subtle energy signatures of the Krillian ships powering up their weapon systems. The attack would come in 3 waves, designed to overwhelm the transport's minimal defenses through coordinated strikes from multiple vectors. It was a proven tactic that had worked flawlessly during their previous raids. The lead Krillian vessel emerged from the asteroid field with predatory grace, its organic-looking hull gleaming with the bioluminescent patterns that marked it as a warrior-caste ship. 2 smaller escorts flanked it, their weapons already charging for the initial assault. Maya recognized the formation from her military training, a classic pincer movement that would leave the target with no escape route. The Stellar Princess detected the approaching threat and began broadcasting standard distress signals while attempting to alter course. The luxury liner's engine strained to generate emergency acceleration, but the massive vessel was simply too large and unwieldy to outrun purpose-built warships. Maya watched the corporate hunters react to the developing situation. Their assault ship, the Meridian Enforcer, dropped its stealth profile and began moving to intercept the Krillians. The vessel was an impressive piece of military engineering, bristling with enough firepower to reduce a small asteroid to cosmic dust. Against conventional opponents, it would have been overwhelming. But Maya had studied the corporate hunters' psychological profiles extensively. They were competent professionals. but they suffered from a critical weakness that was common among beings who relied too heavily on superior technology. They had become predictable. The Enforcer moved in a straight line toward the Krillian formation, broadcasting warnings for them to surrender while powering up its main weapons. Maya could track the corporate ship's targeting systems as they locked onto the 3 Krillian vessels, prioritizing threats according to standard tactical doctrine. What the corporate hunters had not considered was that the Krillians might not be fighting alone. Maya activated her shuttle's modified drive system and began her own approach toward the developing battle. Her vessel's advanced stealth capabilities kept her invisible to all combatants, allowing her to position herself precisely where she needed to be for the next phase of her plan. The Krillians opened fire on the Stellar Princess with characteristic brutality. Coherent energy beams and kinetic projectiles tore through the transport's shields, sending cascades of sparks and debris spinning into the void. The luxury liner's defensive systems attempted to return fire, but their light weapons were utterly inadequate against military-grade armor. Panic spread through the transport's passenger compartments as hull breaches began venting atmosphere into space. Emergency bulkheads sealed automatically, but everyone aboard knew they had minutes at most before the ship's structural integrity failed completely. The corporate hunters responded exactly as Maya had predicted. The Meridian Enforcer accelerated toward the Krillian formation, its captain apparently believing he could end the engagement quickly through superior firepower. The assault ship's main batteries opened fire with devastating effect, sending streams of plasma and particle beams toward the attacking vessels. The lead Krillian ship took a direct hit and exploded in a brilliant flash of vaporized metal and organic compounds. One of the escorts suffered critical damage and began tumbling out of control, its hull bleeding atmosphere and coolant into the nebula. But the third vessel, commanded by the scarred veteran Maya had observed in the cantina, proved more elusive. The surviving Krillian ship abandoned its attack on the transport and turned its full attention to the corporate hunters. Its captain, a warrior named Taktar who had survived over 200 battles, recognized that the real threat was no longer the helpless luxury liner, but the military vessel that had just destroyed 2 of his ships. What followed was a brutal duel between 2 well-armed and expertly commanded vessels. The Meridian Enforcer had superior firepower and defensive systems, but the Krillian ship possessed the maneuverability advantages of its smaller size and its captain's decades of combat experience. Maya watched the battle unfold while making final preparations for her own intervention. Both ships were so focused on their life-or-death struggle that neither paid any attention to what appeared to be a piece of space debris drifting nearby. This was the moment Maya had been waiting for. Her shuttle's cargo bay contained a device that had taken her months to construct and cost nearly half of her accumulated resources. It appeared to be nothing more than a standard emergency beacon, the kind carried by every civilian vessel in case of catastrophic systems failure. But Maya had modified the device extensively, incorporating technology that was theoretically impossible according to conventional physics. The beacon contained a miniaturized quantum entanglement transmitter linked to carefully placed charges throughout the Kepler drift. Maya had spent weeks positioning these charges within the nebula's most unstable regions, disguising them as natural mineral deposits that would not attract attention from passing ships. When activated, the beacon would trigger a cascade reaction that would destabilize the quantum foundations of local spacetime itself. The result would appear to be a natural phenomenon, a sudden collapse of the nebula's internal structure that would create a localized gravity well powerful enough to crush any vessel caught within its influence. Maya launched the beacon toward the center of the developing battle and began her withdrawal to a safe distance. The device drifted silently through the vacuum, its disguised nature ensuring that neither the corporate hunters nor the surviving Krillians paid it any attention. The battle between the 2 warships had reached a critical phase. The Meridian Enforcer had suffered significant damage to its main engines and was beginning to lose maneuvering capability. The Krillian vessel had taken hits to its weapons systems and was operating at reduced combat effectiveness. Both ships were locked in a deadly spiral, each captain trying to position his vessel for a killing blow while avoiding his opponent's remaining weapons. Neither realized they were about to become victims of forces far beyond their understanding. Maya's beacon reached its programmed coordinates and began broadcasting its activation signal. The quantum entanglement transmitter sent instantaneous commands to the charges positioned throughout the drift, timing their detonation to create maximum gravitational distortion. The effect was both immediate and spectacular. Space itself seemed to twist and buckle as fundamental forces that normally operated on cosmic scales were compressed into a region only a few thousand kilometers across. Reality bent inward like a lens focusing starlight, creating visual distortions that hurt to look at directly. The artificial gravity well formed in seconds, its influence spreading outward at the speed of light. Both warships detected the anomaly immediately, but their damaged condition left them unable to escape the phenomenon's rapidly expanding influence. The Meridian Enforcer's captain attempted emergency acceleration, but his crippled engines could not generate sufficient thrust to overcome the artificial gravity field. The corporate ship began falling toward the center of the distortion, its hull groaning under stresses that exceeded its structural tolerances. The Krillian vessel fared no better. Taktar's decades of experience had taught him to recognize natural stellar phenomena that posed threats to navigation, but he had never encountered anything like the localized space-time collapse that was now drawing his ship towards certain destruction. His desperate attempts to break free only accelerated his vessel's spiral toward the gravity well's core. Maya watched from her safe distance as both ships were crushed by forces that compressed their hulls into dense spheres of exotic matter. The entire process took less than 3 minutes, leaving no trace of the vessels except for quantum signatures that would dissipate within hours. The artificial gravity well collapsed as suddenly as it had formed, its exotic matter components decaying into undetectable subatomic particles. To any future investigation, the incident would appear to be a freak occurrence, the kind of natural disaster that occasionally claimed ships in regions known for their gravitational instabilities. With the two most immediate threats eliminated, Maya turned her attention to the Stellar Princess. The luxury transport had suffered extensive damage during the Krillian attack, but its main hull remained intact, and life support was still functioning in most sections. Many passengers and crew members had been killed by the initial assault, but hundreds of survivors remained trapped aboard the crippled vessel. Maya could have simply left them to their fate. The transport's distress signals would eventually bring rescue ships, and the survivors would be able to provide testimony about the Krillian attack. From Maya's perspective, the mission was essentially complete. The Crimson Talon Brotherhood had been eliminated. The corporate hunters were no longer a factor, and she had acquired enough evidence to expose the conspiracy that had destroyed her unit. But as she monitored the transport's emergency communications, Maya heard something that changed her calculations entirely. Among the passenger manifest she had studied earlier, one name had seemed familiar, but not immediately important. Dr. Elena Vasquez, listed as a xenoarchaeologist traveling to a research conference on the Rim Worlds. Maya had not initially connected the name with her past, but the voice she heard coordinating rescue efforts aboard the damaged transport triggered memories she had thought were buried forever. Dr. Vasquez had been her unit's science officer during their final mission 3 years ago. The woman Maya had believed dead, along with the rest of her team. Elena was alive. More than that, she was aboard the Stellar Princess, trapped in a damaged ship that would likely suffer catastrophic hull failure within hours, unless someone intervened. Maya faced a choice that would determine not only her own future, but potentially expose years of careful planning and preparation. Rescuing Elena would require her to reveal capabilities that would destroy her carefully maintained cover identity. It would also mean contact with someone who knew her true identity and could potentially compromise her entire operation. But Elena had been more than just a fellow officer. She had been Maya's closest friend, the person who had helped her maintain her sanity during the darkest periods of their covert operations. If there was even a chance that Elena was alive, Maya could not simply abandon her. Maya began calculating rescue scenarios while moving her shuttle toward the damaged transport. The Stellar Princess was venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches, its artificial gravity failing in several sections. Most of the surviving passengers were trapped in emergency shelters deep within the ship's core, protected by emergency bulkheads but cut off from the main evacuation routes. A conventional rescue would require heavy equipment and multiple ships. The transport did not have hours. Maya's analysis of the hull damage indicated that structural failure would begin within 90 minutes, long before any official rescue operation could reach the scene. This meant Maya would have to attempt the rescue herself, using equipment and capabilities that would reveal her true nature to anyone who witnessed them. She would be trading years of careful anonymity for the chance to save someone who might not even remember her fondly. Maya had spent 3 years learning to suppress her emotional responses in favor of cold tactical calculation. But as she listened to Elena's voice coordinating desperate rescue efforts aboard the dying ship, she realized that some bonds transcended even the most rigorous operational security requirements. She began preparing for a rescue operation that would be the most dangerous mission of her career, not because of the physical challenges involved, but because it would force her to choose between the person she had become and the person she used to be. Maya activated her shuttle's emergency transponder and began broadcasting on the transport's distress frequency. For the first time in 3 years, she was about to break her silence. The words came hesitantly at first, her voice rusty from disuse. But as she established contact with the Stellar Princess, Maya felt something she had not experienced since the day her unit died. She felt hope. Whether that hope would prove to be salvation or destruction remained to be seen. But for Elena Vasquez, Maya was willing to risk everything she had spent years building. The Silent Hunter was about to reveal herself to the galaxy. The consequences would reshape everything she thought she knew about survival, trust, and the price of loyalty in a universe that showed mercy to no one. Stellar Princess. This is emergency vessel designation Echo 7. 7 requesting permission to assist with evacuation procedures. Maya's voice carried across the comm channels with carefully controlled authority. She had modulated her vocal patterns to sound like a standard emergency responder, professional but not memorable. To anyone monitoring the communications, she would appear to be just another Good Samaritan responding to a distress call. But on the bridge of the dying luxury transport, Dr. Elena Vasquez froze in recognition. 3 years had passed since she last heard that voice. 3 years since she had watched her best friend die during their unit's final mission. Yet she knew with absolute certainty who was speaking. Echo 7. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, acting commander of Stellar Princess Emergency Operations. Elena's voice remained steady despite the shock coursing through her system. We have approximately 70 minutes before critical hull failure. 218 survivors are trapped in emergency compartments throughout the ship. Our main evacuation routes have been compromised by structural damage. Maya felt a wave of relief hearing Elena's voice, but forced herself to focus on the tactical situation. The transport's hull integrity was deteriorating faster than her initial estimates had predicted. Secondary explosions from damaged power conduits were causing progressive failures throughout the ship's superstructure. Understood, Stellar Princess. I'm reading massive structural damage to your dorsal sections and complete failure of your primary life support grid. Can you provide exact locations of survivor groups and accessibility status? As Elena transmitted the requested data, Maya was simultaneously scanning the transport with her shuttle's advanced sensor arrays. The information painted a grim picture. Most of the survivors were indeed trapped in sections that would be unreachable through conventional rescue methods. The ship's internal corridor system had been compromised by explosive decompression, and many passages were now blocked by collapsed bulkheads or exposed to vacuum. A normal rescue operation would require multiple ships with specialized equipment, along with teams of trained emergency responders. Even under ideal conditions, extracting over 200 beings from a dying ship would take hours of careful work. Maya had 90 minutes at most, working alone. She began mentally cataloging the equipment stored aboard her shuttle. The vessel's cargo compartments contained resources that far exceeded what any normal civilian ship would carry. military-grade cutting tools, emergency life support pods, portable gravity generators, and a dozen other devices that existed only in the inventories of special operations units. Using this equipment would reveal capabilities that no civilian should possess. But Maya had already crossed that line by choosing to attempt the rescue at all. Echo 77, we're detecting some unusual energy signatures from your vessel. Please transmit your registration codes and emergency authorization. The request came from the transport's security chief, a Zephyrian officer whose species was renowned for their attention to detail and suspicious natures. Maya had anticipated this complication and prepared appropriate responses. Transmitting codes now, Maya replied while broadcasting a perfectly forged identity package that would pass casual inspection. I'm registered as an independent salvage operator with emergency response certification. These readings you're detecting are from specialized rescue equipment. It was technically true, though the equipment in question was designed for military operations rather than civilian emergencies. Maya's shuttle carried devices that could cut through battleship armor, generate localized atmospheric bubbles in hard vacuum, and transport personnel across distances that would be impossible for standard evacuation systems. Elena's voice cut through the technical discussion. Echo 77, we don't have time for extended verification procedures. If you can help us get these people out alive, we'll worry about the paperwork later. Maya could hear the barely controlled desperation in her friend's voice. Elena had always been the most emotionally grounded member of their unit, the person who could maintain professional composure under the most extreme circumstances. The fact that cracks were showing in her facade indicated just how desperate their situation had become. Acknowledged, Stellar Princess. Beginning docking procedures now. Maya guided her shuttle toward the transport's emergency docking ports, most of which had been damaged during the Krillian attack. She was forced to improvise, using her ship's manipulator arms to create a makeshift seal against a hull breach in the transport's cargo section. The process required precision that would have been impossible for a normal pilot, but Maya's enhanced reflexes and cybernetic coordination systems allowed her to achieve a perfect seal despite the challenging conditions. As the airlock cycled, Maya made final preparations for what would undoubtedly be the most complex operation of her career. She activated her suit's full stealth capabilities, ensuring that her enhanced equipment would not be easily detected by casual observation. The modifications were extensive enough that anyone with medical training would immediately realize she was not a baseline human, but Maya hoped the emergency conditions would prevent detailed scrutiny. The airlock opened to reveal the interior of the Stellar Princess, and Maya got her first close look at the devastation caused by the Krillian attack. The luxury transport's opulent corridors were now a maze of twisted metal and sparking electronics. Emergency lighting cast everything in an eerie red glow, while the constant groaning of overstressed hull plates provided an ominous soundtrack. Maya moved through the damaged sections with fluid efficiency, her enhanced senses mapping safe routes through areas that would have been impassable to normal humans. Her cybernetic implants calculated load stresses and structural integrity in real time, allowing her to navigate passages where a single wrong step could trigger catastrophic collapse. She reached the transport's emergency command center within minutes, a journey that should have taken half an hour through the damaged ship. Elena was waiting for her, along with the handful of surviving crew members who were still capable of coordinating rescue operations. The reunion was awkward for reasons that neither woman could afford to examine closely. Elena stared at Maya with a mixture of relief, confusion, and suspicion that spoke to 3 years of believing her friend was dead. Maya maintained her rescue worker facade, but she could see that Elena recognized her despite the changes in appearance and demeanor. Thank you for responding to our distress call, Elena said carefully. As you can see, we're in desperate need of assistance. Maya nodded while studying the tactical displays that showed the locations of surviving passengers throughout the ship. The distribution was even worse than she had initially calculated. Survivor groups were scattered across 12 different sections, many of which were accessible only through routes that required specialized equipment to traverse safely. I can extract approximately 20 people per trip using my ship's emergency pods. Maya lied smoothly. Her shuttle's actual capacity was significantly higher, but revealing that fact would raise questions about her equipment that she preferred to avoid. The challenge will be reaching the survivors in the first place. Most of these locations are going to require some creative problem solving. Elena pulled up detailed schematics of the transport's internal structure, highlighting the areas where survivors were trapped. The largest group is here in the main passenger lounge, 63 people, including several who need immediate medical attention. But the entire section has been sealed off by emergency bulkheads, and the only access routes go through areas that are now exposed to vacuum. Maya studied the schematics while her enhanced cognitive systems ran thousands of calculations per second. The passenger lounge could be reached through the ship's main ventilation system, but the route would require cutting through multiple barriers and maintaining life support throughout the journey. For a normal rescue team, it would be impossible. For Maya, it was merely challenging. "I can reach them," Maya said with quiet confidence, "but I'll need to work alone. The passages I'll be using aren't stable enough for multiple people, and some of the equipment I'll be employing requires specialized training to operate safely." This was another lie, but unnecessary one. Maya's rescue techniques would involve capabilities that no civilian should possess. The last thing she needed was witnesses to her use of military-grade enhancement systems. Elena's expression suggested she suspected there was more to Maya's story than she was revealing. But the urgency of their situation left no time for detailed questioning. "Fine, what do you need from us? Just keep monitoring the ship's structural integrity and let me know if we're running out of time faster than expected," Maya replied. "And prepare your medical facilities for incoming casualties. Some of these people are going to need immediate treatment." Maya returned to her shuttle to retrieve the equipment she would need for the rescue operation. Her cargo compartments yielded devices that would have impressed a military engineering team, but she selected only the tools that could potentially be explained as specialized civilian rescue gear. The portable atmospheric generator was the size of a briefcase but could maintain breathable conditions for dozens of people in hard vacuum. The molecular cutting torch could slice through virtually any material but produced energy signatures that might be mistaken for industrial equipment. The personal gravity harness would allow her to move through damaged ship sections as if she were walking on solid ground, but its operation could theoretically be attributed to advanced but civilian technology. Maya suited up in what appeared to be a standard emergency response outfit, but which actually contained enough defensive and life support systems to keep her alive in environments that would instantly kill an unprotected human. The suit's external appearance was carefully designed to suggest civilian emergency gear, while its actual capabilities rivaled military-powered armor. As she prepared to enter the most dangerous sections of the dying transport, Maya reflected on the irony of her situation. For 3 years, she had worked to become invisible, eliminating threats while ensuring that no one would ever know she had been involved. Now she was about to perform a rescue operation that would require her to use abilities that would mark her as something far beyond a normal human. But Elena was alive, and that changed everything. Maya had spent 3 years believing that everyone she cared about was dead, that she was alone in a galaxy that had betrayed everything she once believed in. The knowledge that at least one member of her old unit had survived gave her something she had not had since the day her world ended. It gave her hope. Maya entered the transport's ventilation system through an access port in the cargo section, beginning a journey that would take her through the heart of a ship that was slowly tearing itself apart. The passages were barely large enough for a human to crawl through, and many sections had been damaged by the initial attack or subsequent systems failures. Her enhanced senses allowed her to navigate in complete darkness, following routes that her cybernetic implants calculated in real time based on structural analysis and atmospheric readings. Normal humans would have become lost within minutes, but Maya moved through the maze of ducts and conduits with the confidence of someone who could perceive the environment in ways that baseline biology could not match. She reached the first survivor group within 20 minutes, cutting through sealed bulkheads with her molecular torch, while maintaining atmospheric pressure through careful use of her portable generator. The survivors, a mixed group of passengers who had been trapped when emergency bulkheads sealed their section, were amazed to see a rescue worker emerge from what they had assumed was an inaccessible ventilation shaft. Maya worked with efficient precision, establishing a temporary atmospheric bubble and guiding the survivors through passages that she had modified to allow safe transit. The rescue required abilities that bordered on superhuman, but the emergency conditions and her careful misdirection prevented the survivors from realizing just how extraordinary their rescuer actually was. The first group was safely transferred to her shuttle within an hour, but Maya knew she was racing against time. The ship's structural integrity was failing faster than her most pessimistic projections had predicted, and she still had over 150 people to evacuate. As she prepared to begin the second rescue operation, Maya received a communication that changed everything she thought she knew about the situation. Echo 77. This is Dr. Vasquez. I need to speak with you privately on a secured channel. There's something about this attack that you need to know before you continue the rescue operation. Elena's voice carried a tension that went beyond the immediate emergency. Maya recognized the tone from their military days, the careful control that Elena used when she had discovered information that could fundamentally alter their understanding of a mission. Maya established a secure communication link while continuing her preparations for the next phase of the rescue. Go ahead, Doctor. What have you found? The Krillian attack wasn't random, Elena said quietly. I've been analyzing the damage patterns and targeting priorities. They were specifically trying to capture the ship intact, not destroy it, and they were looking for someone particular among the passengers. Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the transport's failing life support systems. Who were they looking for? According to the data I've recovered from the ship's security systems, they were targeting a passenger traveling under the identity of Dr. Sarah Mitchell, an independent researcher working on xenoarchaeological projects in the Outer Rim. Maya's enhanced memory systems immediately accessed the passenger manifest she had studied earlier. Dr. Steina. Sarah Mitchell had been listed as a xenoarchaeologist just like Elena, but Maya's background research had indicated that no such person existed in any official database. Elena, there is no Dr. Sarah Mitchell. That identity is a fabrication. I know, Elena replied grimly, because Dr. Sarah Mitchell is actually Dr. Sarah Chen, your sister, Maya. She's alive, and she was aboard this ship when the attack began. The revelation hit Maya like a physical blow. Sarah had been presumed dead for over 5 years, lost during a deep space research expedition that had vanished without a trace in uncharted space. Maya had grieved for her sister and eventually accepted that she would never know what had happened to her. But if Sarah was alive and if the Krillians had been specifically hunting her, then Maya's careful revenge against the Crimson Talon Brotherhood might have been the result of a much more complex conspiracy than she had realized. Where is she now? Maya asked, her voice deadly calm despite the emotional turmoil coursing through her system. That's the problem, Elena replied. She's in the most heavily damaged section of the ship, trapped in an area that suffered direct hits from Krillian cutting beams. The section has been sealed off because of radiation contamination and structural collapse. I don't think anyone could survive in there, and even if they could, I don't see how anyone could reach them. Maya was already moving toward the contaminated section before Elena finished speaking. Her sister was alive, and Maya would not lose her again, no matter what it cost, no matter what capabilities she had to reveal, no matter what consequences followed. The silent hunter was about to discover that some bonds transcended even the most carefully calculated operational security requirements. And the galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone threatened the last person Maya Chen cared about. The contaminated section of the Stellar Princess existed in a hellish twilight of radiation, twisted metal, and failing atmospheric systems. Maya moved through the devastation like a ghost, her enhanced physiology allowing her to operate in conditions that would have killed a baseline human within minutes. Her suit's radiation shielding was operating at maximum capacity, but even with military-grade protection, Maya knew she had limited time before exposure reached dangerous levels. The Krillian cutting beams had sliced through the ship's hull like surgical instruments, leaving behind clouds of exotic particles that continued to emit lethal energy signatures. Maya's enhanced senses painted a three-dimensional map of the destruction as she navigated through passages that existed more as suggestions than actual corridors. Bulkheads had been sheared away, leaving skeletal frameworks that groaned under the stress of containing atmosphere against the void. Emergency lighting flickered sporadically, creating a strobe effect that would have been disorienting to normal vision but which Maya's cybernetic optics automatically compensated for. She followed the faint energy signature of a personal beacon deeper into the ship's wounded core. The signal was weak and intermittent, suggesting that its power source was nearly exhausted or that interference was disrupting transmission, but it was the only indication that anyone in this section might still be alive. The beacon led her to what had once been a luxury stateroom, now a twisted maze of collapsed walls and scattered debris. Maya's molecular scanner detected traces of human DNA among the wreckage, but the readings were confused by radiation interference and the exotic byproducts of Krillian weapons technology. "Sarah?" Maya called softly, her voice carried through her suit's external speakers. "Sarah, if you can hear me, respond with any kind of signal." For long moments, there was only silence broken by the distant groaning of overstressed metal. Then, Maya detected something that her enhanced hearing could barely distinguish from the background noise of a dying ship. A rhythmic tapping, faint but unmistakably artificial. Someone was alive in this radiation-soaked tomb. Maya began moving debris with a combination of her suit's powered assistance and carefully applied force from her enhanced musculature. Each piece of twisted metal she moved revealed more destruction, but she continued working with methodical precision. Her sister was somewhere in this wreckage, and Maya would excavate the entire section if necessary. She found Sarah beneath a collapsed section of ceiling that had protected her from the worst effects of the radiation exposure. The makeshift shelter had probably saved her life, but it had also trapped her in a space barely large enough for a single person. Sarah was unconscious but alive, her breathing shallow but steady. Maya's medical scanners immediately assessed her sister's condition. Severe radiation exposure, multiple fractures, possible internal bleeding, and symptoms of shock that indicated her body was shutting down non-essential functions to preserve core biological processes. Sarah needed immediate medical attention that went far beyond anything available aboard the dying transport. But as Maya prepared to extract her sister from the debris, she detected something that made her pause. Sarah's unconscious form was clutching a data storage device with a death grip, her fingers locked around the small cylinder despite her injuries. Maya's scanners indicated the device was still functional, protected by military-grade encryption that suggested its contents were far more important than typical research data. Maya carefully removed the device from Sarah's grasp and connected it to her suit's analysis systems. The encryption was sophisticated, but Maya's enhanced cognitive implants were equipped with quantum processors that could break most security systems given sufficient time and processing power. What she found within the device changed everything she thought she knew about her sister's disappearance and the conspiracy that had destroyed her unit. The data contained 5 years of covert research into an alien technology that officially did not exist. Sarah had not been lost during a routine scientific expedition. She had been recruited by a joint human-alien task force investigating artifacts left behind by a species that had vanished from the galaxy millions of years ago. The predecessors, as they were called in the classified files, had left behind technology that seemed to violate fundamental laws of physics. Devices that could manipulate gravity, matter transmuters that operated on principles beyond current understanding, and most importantly, weapons systems that could eliminate entire star systems without leaving detectable traces. Sarah's team had been systematically locating and studying these artifacts, working to unlock their secrets before other species could acquire them for military purposes. But the research had attracted attention from factions that were willing to kill anyone who possessed knowledge of predecessor technology. The Krillian attack on the transport had not been a random act of piracy. It had been an assassination attempt, ordered by beings who wanted to ensure that Sarah's research never reached its intended destination. The same conspiracy that had betrayed Maya's unit was still active, and it extended far beyond the criminal networks she had been hunting. But there was more. According to the files, Sarah's research team had made a breakthrough just before their cover was blown. They had successfully activated a predecessor device, something no one had achieved in millions of years of galactic history. The implications were staggering, representing technological capabilities that could reshape the balance of power throughout known space. Maya realized that saving her sister was only the beginning. Sarah possessed knowledge that multiple factions would kill for, and Maya's rescue operation had just placed both of them in the crosshairs of forces that operated on a galactic scale. She sealed the data device in her suit's secure storage compartment and began the delicate process of extracting Sarah from the wreckage. Her sister's injuries were severe enough that any movement could prove fatal, but remaining in the contaminated section would guarantee death from radiation exposure. Maya deployed a portable medical stasis field around Sarah's body, using technology that was definitely not standard civilian rescue equipment. The field would stabilize her sister's condition and provide protection from further radiation exposure, but it would also mark Maya as someone with access to advanced military medical systems. As she carefully lifted Sarah from the debris, Maya detected new energy signatures approaching through the ship's damaged corridors. Someone else was moving through the contaminated sections, someone whose equipment signatures suggested military or paramilitary origins. Maya's tactical systems immediately identified the newcomers as a threat. Their movement patterns were too coordinated for civilian rescue workers, and their equipment emissions indicated weapons and sensor systems that far exceeded anything carried by emergency responders. These were professional operators, and they were heading directly towards Sarah's location. Maya had perhaps 10 minutes before the unknown team reached her position. Her sister was stabilized but unconscious, requiring careful transport through passages that were barely navigable, even for someone with Maya's enhanced capabilities. Fighting her way out while protecting Sarah would be nearly impossible, especially since Maya's opponents appeared to be equipped with military-grade gear. But Maya had spent 3 years learning to turn disadvantages into tactical advantages. The contaminated section that made rescue so difficult would also limit her enemies' options and sensor capabilities. The radiation interference that complicated her equipment would affect their systems as well, and Maya's intimate knowledge of the ship's layout gained through hours of detailed analysis gave her navigational advantages that her opponents would not possess. Maya began moving through the wreckage with Sarah's stasis-encased form floating beside her, supported by her suit's gravity manipulation systems. She chose a route that would take them away from the approaching team while leading toward an emergency exit she had identified during her initial survey of the ship. But as she navigated the maze of twisted metal and sparking electronics, Maya's enhanced hearing detected something that made her blood run cold. The approaching team was communicating in Krillian, speaking in the rapid, clicking language she had learned during her hunt for the Crimson Talon Brotherhood. Some of the Krillians had survived the artificial gravity well that was supposed to have eliminated them. Worse, they had boarded the transport and were now hunting for Sarah with the determination of beings who knew exactly what they were looking for. Maya's carefully orchestrated plan to eliminate the conspiracy while maintaining her anonymity. The enemy was not only still active, they were now aware that someone with extraordinary capabilities was protecting their target. She found herself trapped in a running battle through the dying ship's most dangerous sections, carrying her unconscious sister while being pursued by alien warriors who possessed both superior numbers and intimate knowledge of the technology they were seeking to acquire. Maya's suit systems detected at least 6 Krillian operatives moving through different sections of the ship, coordinating their search with military precision. They had come prepared for serious resistance, carrying weapons that could penetrate heavy armor and sensor systems that could track targets through most forms of concealment. As Maya reached a junction between damaged corridors, she was forced to make a choice that would determine not only her own survival, but the fate of knowledge that could reshape galactic civilization. With Trostedi, she could continue trying to escape with Sarah, risking capture by opponents who were specifically prepared to deal with enhanced humans. Or she could go on the offensive, using capabilities she had hidden for 3 years to eliminate the threat once and for all. The choice was made for her when the lead Krillian operative rounded a corner 50 meters ahead, his compound eyes scanning the passage with mechanical precision. Maya recognized him immediately. Akhtar, the scarred veteran she had believed dead, was very much alive and carrying weapons that glowed with the distinctive energy signatures of predecessor technology. The conspiracy had access to alien artifacts that made them far more dangerous than Maya had realized. But they had also made a critical mistake by targeting someone who possessed the skills and determination to fight back against impossible odds. Maya activated her suit's full combat capabilities for the first time in 3 years, feeling dormant systems come online with lethal efficiency. Her enhanced physiology surged with adrenaline as neurochemical boosters flooded her system, accelerating her reflexes and cognitive processing to superhuman levels. The Silent Hunter was about to become visible to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. The consequences would be far-reaching and potentially catastrophic, but Maya no longer cared about maintaining her anonymity. Her sister was alive, and Maya would protect her against any threat, regardless of the personal cost. The final confrontation was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone pushed a human to the absolute limits of her capabilities. The results would be remembered for generations, though few would ever know the true identity of the warrior who refused to let her family be destroyed by forces that believed themselves untouchable. Maya Chen stepped out of the shadows and into legend, carrying weapons that had never failed her and determination that had been forged in the crucible of betrayal and loss. The Krillians were about to discover why humans had survived to join galactic civilization, and why underestimating Earth's children was always a fatal mistake. The hunt was no longer silent. It had become a war. The first shot came without warning, a searing beam of predecessor energy that would have vaporized a normal human. Maya's enhanced reflexes kicked in before her conscious mind registered the threat, her body moving with superhuman speed as combat stimulants flooded her nervous system. She rolled behind a twisted bulkhead as the energy beam carved a molten furrow through the metal where she had been standing. Sarah's stasis field flickered but held, the medical device automatically adjusting its position to maintain protective coverage around Maya's unconscious sister. Target acquired. Taktar's voice clicked through the ship's damaged communication systems. Human female. Enhanced physiology confirmed. Exercise extreme caution. This one is not what she appears to be. Maya smiled grimly as she activated her suit's full combat protocols. 3 years of hiding were over. For the first time since her unit's destruction, she was about to fight as herself rather than as a carefully constructed facade. Her enhanced neural implants synchronized with the suit's targeting systems, creating a tactical overlay that tracked 6 separate threat signatures moving through the ship's damaged sections. The Krillians were advancing with professional competence, using their superior numbers and knowledge of the transport's layout to coordinate a systematic search pattern. But Maya had advantages they could not anticipate. Her cybernetic implants contained detailed schematics of every section of the ship, downloaded during her initial reconnaissance. Her enhanced physiology allowed her to operate in environments that would quickly exhaust even the hardy Krillian warriors. And most importantly, she had spent 3 years perfecting techniques for fighting enemies who believed themselves to be apex predators. Maya placed Sarah's stasis pod in a shielded alcove and armed the defensive systems that would protect her sister from both radiation exposure. Then she began moving through the ship with the fluid precision of a predator that had finally been unleashed. The first Krillian operative never saw her coming. Maya emerged from a ventilation shaft directly above his position. moving with enhanced speed that allowed her to close the distance before he could react. Her molecular cutting blade, disguised as a standard rescue tool, sliced through his exoskeleton with surgical precision. The warrior fell without making a sound, his acidic blood pooling around the wound, while his nervous system shut down from neural disruption. Maya had learned during her military service that Krillians possessed a specific vulnerability to attacks targeting their spinal clusters, knowledge that she was now applying with lethal efficiency. "Hexic is down," another voice reported in rapid Krillian. No visual on the target, she moves like a ghost. Maya was already repositioning, using her intimate knowledge of the ship's layout to outflank the remaining operatives. Her enhanced senses tracked their movements through multiple corridors, while her tactical systems calculated optimal firing positions and escape routes. The second Krillian died when Maya's plasma rifle, set to its highest setting, punched through his armor from an impossible angle. She had fired through 3 bulkheads using her scanners to track his exact position, while remaining completely hidden from his sensors. To the surviving Krillians, it would appear as if their comrade had been killed by an invisible opponent. "She has military-grade equipment," Taktar's voice carried a note of grudging respect. "This is not a civilian rescue worker. We are facing a professional operative." Maya began psychological warfare, using her suit's communication systems to broadcast carefully chosen phrases in perfect Krillian. "You made a mistake coming here, Taktar. I know who sent you, and I know what you're looking for, but you will not have her." The effect was immediate and satisfying. The remaining Krillians began displaying the agitation patterns that indicated stress and confusion. They had come prepared to deal with human resistance, but Maya's demonstration of capabilities that far exceeded normal parameters was forcing them to recalculate their tactical assumptions. "You know my name," Thaktar replied in accented but perfectly understandable human standard. "Yet, I do not know yours. Are you the one who destroyed my ships in the nebula?" Maya moved through the transport's corridors like a vengeful spirit, always staying one step ahead of the Krillian surge pattern while gradually reducing their numbers. The third operative fell to a trap Maya constructed using the ship's own damaged systems, electrocuting him with a surge of power that she routed through the metal decking beneath his feet. "Your ships were eliminated because you threatened innocent people," Maya responded as she prepared her next ambush. "Your presence here confirms that you have learned nothing from that experience." The fourth Krillian died when Maya used her gravity manipulation harness to drop a section of collapsed ceiling directly onto his position. The warrior's exoskeleton, designed to withstand energy weapons and projectile attacks, was no match for several tons of metal and composite materials falling at accelerated velocity. "Impossible!" one of the surviving operatives clicked in agitation. "She controls the ship itself. How does a human possess such capabilities?" Maya allowed herself a moment of satisfaction as she heard the fear creeping into their communications. The Krillians were beginning to realize they had gravely underestimated their opponent, but the knowledge was coming too late to save them. "I am what happens when you betray someone who trusted you," Maya broadcast as she closed in on the fifth operative. "I am what you created when you destroyed everything I once believed in, and I am why you should have been more careful about who you chose to make into an enemy." The fifth Krillian attempted to use his predecessor weapon against Maya when she cornered him in the ship's main engineering section. The alien artifact discharged a wave of energy that could have reduced an entire building to subatomic particles, but Maya's enhanced reflexes allowed her to dodge behind the ship's fusion containment unit. The energy beam struck the heavily shielded reactor housing and reflected back at its source, turning the Krillian's own weapon against him. Maya watched dispassionately as the warrior was consumed by forces that existed beyond conventional physics, leaving nothing behind except a faint energy signature that quickly faded. Now only Taktar remained. Maya found him in the ship's central command center, standing over the bodies of several crew members who had apparently tried to resist his boarding party. The veteran warrior held his weapon ready, but his posture suggested he knew the futility of his position. "You fight well for a human," Taktar said as Maya emerged from the shadows with her own weapon trained on him. I have faced many species across the galaxy, but few possess the combination of skill and ruthlessness that you have demonstrated today. You and your associates made this personal when you destroyed my unit 3 years ago. Everything that has happened since then is a direct result of that decision. Taktar's compound eyes widened in what might have been recognition. You are one of the humans from the research station incident. We were told that all witnesses had been eliminated. You were told wrong, and now you're going to tell me everything you know about the conspiracy that ordered those killings. Who gives you your orders? Where are they located? What are their ultimate objectives? The Krillian warrior straightened to his full height, his scarred carapace reflecting the emergency lighting as he prepared for his final battle. You believe you can intimidate information from me with threats? I am a veteran of 200 campaigns. I do not break easily. Maya's enhanced systems detected subtle changes in Taktar's biochemistry that indicated he was preparing to activate some kind of internal self-destruct mechanism. The warrior intended to die rather than reveal information that could compromise his employers. You're right, Maya said calmly. Threats won't work on someone with your experience and dedication. But I'm not going to threaten you. Instead, Maya activated a device that she had constructed during her years of hunting the conspiracy. The neural interface probe was based on technology that officially did not exist, capable of extracting information directly from a living brain without causing permanent damage. Taktar realized what was happening and tried to trigger his suicide protocol, but Maya's enhanced speed allowed her to disable the mechanism before it could activate. The probe attached itself to the Krillian's cranial structure with microscopic precision, bypassing his natural defenses to access his memory centers directly. The information that flowed into Maya's consciousness was staggering in its scope and implications. The conspiracy that had destroyed her unit was not merely a criminal organization or even a rogue military operation. It was a multi-species alliance that included humans, Krillians, Vorthak, and several other civilizations, all working together to acquire and control predecessor technology. The ultimate goal was nothing less than the complete restructuring of galactic civilization. The conspirators intended to use the ancient artifacts to establish themselves as the galaxy's dominant power, eliminating any species or government that refused to submit to their authority. Sarah's research had threatened this plan because she had discovered something that the conspirators were not prepared to handle. The predecessor technology was not merely advanced science. It was sentient, possessing a form of consciousness that had been dormant for millions of years, but which was beginning to awaken in response to the increased activity around their artifacts. The implications were terrifying. If the predecessors returned to active consciousness, they would find a galaxy that had been strip mining their technology for decades. Their response to such desecration was likely to be swift and final, potentially resulting in the extinction of every species that had touched their legacy. But Sarah had also discovered something else. The predecessors had left behind more than just technology. They had created a fail-safe system, a way to prevent their artifacts from being misused by species that were not ready for such power. Maya was one of the keys to that system. Her enhanced physiology, the result of human military augmentation programs, contained specific genetic markers that the predecessors had somehow incorporated into their fail-safe protocols millions of years before humans had even evolved. The conspiracy had destroyed Maya's unit because they had discovered her potential role in the predecessor systems. They had intended to capture her alive for study, but Maya's apparent death had forced them to pursue alternative approaches to neutralizing the failsafe. Now they knew she was alive, and they would stop at nothing to acquire her. Maya disconnected the neural probe and looked down at Taktar's unconscious form. The warrior would live, but he would remember nothing of the interrogation or Maya's identity. She had what she needed to continue her hunt, but the scope of her mission had expanded far beyond personal revenge. She returned to Sarah's stasis pod and began the process of evacuating her sister from the dying transport. But as she worked, Maya's enhanced senses detected new energy signatures approaching through space. A fleet of ships was converging on their location, moving with the coordinated precision that suggested military organization. Maya's analysis of the approaching vessels confirmed her worst fears. The conspiracy had anticipated that their boarding party might fail, and they had positioned backup forces to ensure that neither Sarah nor her research could escape their control. Maya faced a choice that would determine not only her own fate but potentially the future of galactic civilization. She could attempt to escape with Sarah, risking capture by forces that now knew her true capabilities. Or she could make a stand, using everything she had learned and every advantage she possessed to strike a blow against enemies who believed themselves untouchable. As Maya guided her shuttle away from the Stellar Princess toward the approaching enemy fleet, she made her decision. She had spent 3 years hiding from a conspiracy that had destroyed everything she cared about. It was time to show them what a single human could accomplish when pushed beyond her limits. The galaxy was about to witness the emergence of something new and dangerous, a warrior who combined human determination with technology that transcended the boundaries of any single species. Maya Chen was no longer hiding from her enemies. She was hunting them. And across the stars, in hidden bases and secret facilities, the conspirators who had believed themselves safe began to realize that they had made a fundamental error in judgment. They had created an enemy who possessed not only the skills to find them, but the determination to ensure that their plans would never succeed. The silent hunter had found her voice, and her message was simple and absolute. The war for the galaxy's future had begun, and humanity would not be going quietly into extinction. The predecessors had chosen their champion well. The mute girl no one pays attention to is truly the most dangerous hunter alive. Best HFY Stories.